she put in so many Easter eggs for us and our friends. That's just, the show is full of them. My favorite is that Brody's basement. That set is built to look as close as possible to my best friend's basement.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Pop Culture Planet. I'm your host, Kristen Maldonado, and today we're speaking with Lili Haydn and Ben Bromfield, the composing duo of Netflix's hit show, Ginny and Georgia. I would love to hear from each of you. What inspired you to get into this industry, and how did the opportunity arise for you guys to come together to compose the Ginny and Georgia score?
I just kind of was lucky to figure out what I wanted to do as a career when I was 20 years old. So I basically dropped everything and went to and transferred colleges to Berklee College of Music to study film scoring. And then moved out to LA when I was done, started working as an assistant to a bunch of composers while doing some side gigs, scoring like short films for, student films or local filmmakers, a couple of feature films. I also was a music director at Second City Hollywood. That was like an interesting side gig I was doing. So it's like music, comedy songs and stuff at an improv theater. I worked as an assistant, got a bunch of experience working on TV shows through that. A guy I worked for named McAdams, great guy, very great composer. And then after about 5-7 years of that, struck out on my own and started getting got some representation and started getting my own gigs in my name. So that's the story of me.
My mom used to tell people that I started playing violin in the womb, and it was very irritating. But I started playing violin when I was 7 because I had a dream I could play violin, and performed with my mom, who was a wonderful singer-songwriter and comedian. I played with the LA Philharmonic at 15 and started when I went to college, which was not for music, but because I thought I wanted to be a human rights lawyer. I started jamming with people, and when I got to jamming, it was like my head exploded, and I just had to start collaborating with everybody that I met, and I ended up on some amazing stages with some legendary people like Herbie Hancock and Jimmy Page and Robert Plant and Parliament Funkadelic and George Clinton and stuff like that. Made my own records for Atlantic Records and toured the world and opening for different people and on my own. And then I started working with Hans Zimmer, who invited me to be part of his team, and I started scoring, doing additional music for different projects. And then people liked my records, asked me to start scoring their films. Did about 18 films, and then and I continued to do session work and playing and singing for people. And I worked for McAdams, and Tree invited me to this gig, and Ben and I jammed, and then when Ben got the opportunity to pitch on Ginny and Georgia, Ben, a dear friend from high school, created the show, and so he had the opportunity to pitch, and he knew that he wanted to have somebody that, with sort of a skill set like mine, and so he called me based on Tree Adams's recommendation, and we got together, and it was just fireworks from there.
Even just from reading the script, I felt like a composer teaming up with a female composer who's also a vocalist would be really great for this, because it's a mother-daughter story, and it's just using your voice as a scoring instrument is a very emotional thing, and the subjects of the show can get really dark and deep and stuff, and really needs that kind of sensibilities.
Like Lili said, you and the show's creator go way back to high school, and some of these moments, right, were kind of lifted from or adapted from things that maybe you guys have actually experienced. So what was that like?
That was really interesting. Sarah, who I'm so proud of for everything she's been able to do with this. I mean, it's really mind blowing that after all how long I've known her, about 15 or 18 years or something, and then to be able to work together on something like this. She put in so many Easter eggs for us and our friends. That's just, the show is full of them. My favorite is that there's a set, I think it's Brody's parents' basement. The scenes where they're smoking from the bong and stuff in episode 2. That set is built to look as close as possible to my best friend's basement. My best friend Nick, who we all used to hang out in his basement and get up to all sorts of shenanigans. It looks a little different because it's a set, but it was immediately obvious to me. And I remember texting her as I was watching it, being like, "You did not." She didn't prep me for any of this stuff. There's a lot of fun references to our high school, and then there are some stories that are like real things. That I know the tampon throwing incident in episode 2 is a real thing that happened to her. I remember when that happened. And I can't wait to see what other things she lifts from our experience for season 2 and beyond. I have some ideas, but I don't want to spoil anything.
Did you notice any characters that you felt like, maybe this is me?
Not me personally, although, I was in a band in high school, and we were the band in the friend group. So I think that the band is loosely based on our band, my high school band that I was in with Nick, and we would practice in his basement, which is part of why there's a band set up in that scene. But no, I'm not personally represented, but I definitely have been able to spot people who are and be like, that's this person, not exactly. But I know, and then certain characters' names. Even just today, I just was thinking about it, and it dawned on me oh, Sophie, that's this Sophie.
Too funny. And now Lily, as Ben mentioned, capturing these very intimate moments and having this female voice representing, the music in this. Could you talk a little bit about capturing those vulnerable female experiences in this show through music?
Those kind of dark, intimate, emotional moments are really my comfort zone. That's where I started out as an actress, actually. So I relate to, as a film composer, TV composer, I tend to relate to characters, to dialogues with that same kind of sensitivity. I try to keep that emotional sensitivity. It's very natural for me to just kind of capture a moment with my voice and violin. And it was really great when we were able to kind of stretch out and use a little bit more of that, like in episode 6, where we ended up, it kind of it gets even darker than it has been. And also I had a close relationship with my mom of anybody that I've ever met. So the mother-daughter thing, even though it's a different kind of relationship, the closeness and friendship and intimacy there resonated with me as well.
What is the process like for you guys working together to score a scene? Is there a lot of back and forth, or are you we're on the same wavelength from the beginning?
It was more like a matter of, which scenes spoke most to who, and then we would each take a crack at that. But then once we did that first round, it was really kind of open season. And in that first round, we would be sending stuff to each other. I might send something to her and ask for her to add some vocals, and I might not really be that much more specific beyond that, or violin. And she might do the same thing with me with adding synth stuff or something like that. And then once that first pass was done, when it came time to do revisions, it was kind of open season. Whoever feels more on whoever started the cue, the other person might do the revisions on them. It was just a very fluid process, I would say.
Basically, it was really important that when we started, that we were on the same page. That we agreed on, we said, what are the elements? It's sort of like when you start a painting, So yeah, we did take different sections of the painting, but when we started and we agreed on, okay, this is our color palette. This is our, these are our themes. These are our, this is the stuff that, this is our toolbox. Basically.
Palette, yeah.
And we shared a toolbox and a palette. So I think, it was really important that this was a cohesive sound, even though we had different skill sets. And just to be clear, we both, compose, I don't just sing and play violin, and he doesn't just play piano. We both are, we both do stuff on our own where we have, we paint the entire painting, but it was really great to find, to have each other as partners, because I think we really see eye to eye on a lot of things, on most things. So it was really fun kind of creating that palette together and then figuring out how to color in the painting.
Also, like, we use a lot of the same setup on our sort of production palette. We're both using Pro Tools. So thank you for adding that, Lily. Like, we started out like being like, these are the sounds, and we started, you know, she would come up with a cool sound and be like, how about this, and send it to me, and then that would be added to the palette. Or, you know, I would do the same thing and be like, oh, what are you using? What are you using? So there's sort of like this melding of the minds as far as like what kind of instruments we were using. And it was a great way to sort of influence each other. I mean, I feel like I got a lot out of working with her, in terms of just having a different perspective on music production and bringing that in and using some of those same tools that she uses, and vice versa, I think.
I come from making records. I mean, we both play live, and we're both, I think, you know, serious musicians in a way that not all media composers are. You know, Ben's an amazing pianist and does a live gig every week that he's allowed to. And I perform everywhere I can, you know, as well. So that's we have a mutual respect for each other's abilities, and it's really fun to collaborate with, and you know, but especially when you have a cool partner to be, you know.
Oh, you're a cool partner.
That's great. That is awesome. Do you have any favorite scoring moments over the course of the season?
Episode 6 is where Georgia, you know, really has to, you know, it's where she tortures the past, and she kind of, it's like a turning point where she's kind of given up. It's a loss of innocence in a way. Not that she ever really was, but this is a real defining moment, and it's a loss of innocence for both of our main characters. And it's very emotional, and that's where I felt like we were really allowed to stretch out and share some of that darker, intimate stuff. That's where, you know, one of the places where the dramatic legs of this show really take hold. So that was a really gratifying place for me. But you know, the whole season is full of these great moments that are just so human and so engaging and so fun, and have so many different influences from different genres that I really just love the whole. We both loved the whole season.
Yeah, definitely. There are two that come to mind. First, I'll just generally say episode 5 was a lot of fun, the Halloween episode, just to do all those different styles of horror movie. And it's like completely bonkers and just like sort of, yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in there. But individual scenes, I would say the sexting hunter scene in episode 4, that is like basically a silent scene. It's like 2.5 minutes long. It's like a silent scene, and the music is like completely telling the story. So that's a really cool one. That was really also one of the most difficult, because it was just like having to do. I've done a lot of silent stuff, silent films, short films, like some episodes of television. I mean, I've also done a lot of animated television. There's a lot of what I was doing before we did Ginny and Georgia. But having to do it in this style of like sort of pop music style scoring was really challenging, and it was really interesting to do that. And then the other scene that comes to mind is the one where Paul proposes, which is actually sort of, it's kind of a song-like cue, and there's a lot of dialogue there, so it maybe doesn't like draw the attention the same way as the one in episode 4. It's got Lily's husband singing on it, which is very cool. And it's just like such a great character turn, because I think what I mostly like about that is the moment in the series where like up until then you thought Paul was just kind of like this nice, sweet guy. And then like he slams down the ring and goes into this monologue where it's just like, oh no, like he's a sociopath too, because he's in politics, and like they're actually cut from the same cloth, and they're actually perfect. And this, the whole like will they or won't they thing is completely flipped on its head. And there's a really cool piece of music under there that's just kind of like this song like cue about power, give me that power. So I like that moment a lot.
We're getting to season 2, super exciting. Are you guys already like thinking about things? You have plans already?
We don't want to count our chickens before they're, so just to say that, but, part of the way that we were able to navigate this season, because it was, I feel like one of the reasons that this, one of the reasons that I feel particularly proud of our work on this show is that it was so difficult it was such a challenge to navigate all of the different influences, because a lot of times you get a gig and, okay, this is drama. You know what to do with that. Okay, this is a comedy. You know what to do with that. Okay, this is something quirky. Okay, it's all like that. Whatever you're going to do. This was really a complex tapestry. And so for us to be able to navigate that, part of the way we were able to do that was to actually get into the head of the show's creator, Ben's friend. So we had an in already because he already was friend.
Right.
But we had to really kind of like, it took a couple of rounds where we had to say, okay, how do we get into your head? How do we sort of like, we had to make a roadmap of what she was hearing. So we got into her head by, just listening to everything she liked and then making a big batch of music that, was basically kind of our grab bag. So I think we're kind of thinking about making another grab bag of
right.
music. And so Ben and I have been talking about, like getting together, once every couple of weeks or something like that. And just, and now that we can be in the same room since we're both vaccinated, we're talking about, like just making a new set of music. And, we have to write that text then to
ask them what they've been listening to lately. Yeah, because that was, we want to hear what kind of music they like so we can sort of keep the show current, keep the music modern, and incorporate that into what we've already done. And the interesting thing about that music that we wrote at the beginning is that a lot of it ended up in the show. Some of it actually didn't, for whatever reason, didn't end up in there yet. Maybe it'll end up there later. But yeah, exactly. But it was just really interesting to like write a bunch of music for the show away from the scenes, and so that's kind of what we were thinking of getting into doing some of that soon. Better. Might as well start soon.
It'll be fun.
It's fun.
And actually, that's one of the techniques that a lot of that we do when we write for films as well. Like you get a sense of what the story that they're trying to tell is, and then we do what we call a suite. So it's like, okay, this is basically like you're making a sound movie in a way. So I like to, that's how a lot of people do it. That's how Hans Zimmer does it. So he'll write a few suites, and then the music editor will pepper it in through the whole film as they're kind of, what they call temping, which is putting in music, that's temporary. So that's the ideal, is to like basically have them use all of our music as they sort of start to build the show. Actually, our soundtrack, which is available on Spotify, has a bunch of those pieces. So you can check that out. And it's a really fun soundtrack. It kind of it'll remind you of the show, but it'll also kind of expand your view of what the show is and where we are coming from.
If you like this one, you can watch more Pop Culture Planet right over here, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.